welcome, Heather. I'm so excited to have you here to talk about such an important topic that I feel like voice teachers need to know more about. And I am so excited to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So I feel like the voice is just such a personal part of all of our identities. And in my experience, working on it can be it can be so vulnerable, right? I know it is for myself, even my journey, and it's a very vulnerable experience for anyone, which is why I feel like as voice teachers, we have this responsibility to really create a safe space and environment for our clients to experiment and fail and try again and all of that as they explore and develop their voices. So I would imagine that working on the voice can be especially vulnerable experience for gender diverse singers and voice users. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So it's so important, like you said, to create a safe, open, welcoming space for all of our students, especially students who are a part of an underserved, underrepresented community. It's already a vulnerable experience sharing our voice with someone, and it's especially vulnerable when you're sharing a voice at first that doesn't really align with who you are.
Yeah.
And the most recent statistic is that about 0.6% of the US population is transgender. So that's almost 1%, which is a whole lot of people. Uh,
Yeah.
and that
Yes.
number is just going to keep growing. This population is just going to become more and more visible. So chances are voice teachers will come across a student who is gender diverse, and it is our job to affirm the singer's identity through voice.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, even just that, the way of saying that, that we're affirming
Mhm.
that, that affirmation. So if you could give voice teachers one tip that would help them become more culturally competent with the gender diverse population and help their students who are gender diverse feel more comfortable in their studio, what would that be?
Absolutely. I love that question. So I would say understanding your students' gender identity and pronouns are number one. I usually send out a Google form just asking, what are your pronouns? What is your name? I don't really ask about legal name because it doesn't really matter.
Right. Right. No, yeah. Why does that matter?
I just know what they want me to call them.
Hmm.
Asking about gender identity. What can I do to make you feel comfortable working with me? Um, so yeah, understanding gender identity and pronouns. And I mean, my biggest tip is just to treat them as humans, because trans people are just humans and they just want to be treated the same as everyone else, if
Yeah.
not more love and care. So just treating them with all the respect and creating a safe space.
Yes. Yes. So when you are seeing a new client, how do you go about helping an individual find what feels like an authentic voice for them? Or especially if it's something that is maybe very different than what they're used to, or what does that process look like for you?
Absolutely. I have a voice feminization and voice masculinization program for the speaking voice. And usually I'll go through the different components. I'll start with pitch and resonance and intonation, and then we'll go into the vocal tract modifications and vowel modifications
Mm.
and articulation. And I sort of go through it and just let them know, research shows that, this is a feminine quality or this is a masculine quality. Would you like to try that? And then we'll try it, and, I'll check in with them and see if it aligns with their identity. If not, we just kind of throw it away. If they
Yeah.
like, we'll work on it more. With the speaking voice, I kind of work up a hierarchy. So we start with words and then phrases and functional sentences, conversation. If they're wanting to work on their singing voice, then of course I create, singing exercises with the goals that they're wanting to target, and
Hmm.
carrying that over into, songs that align with singers that they would really like to sound like. Sometimes I'll have them bring in a recording of a singer or speaker that they really like to listen to. And we'll kind of analyze the different characteristics and see if we can take on some of those characteristics in their voice, if it aligns with their unique identity.
I would imagine that listening to some examples probably is really helpful in that process. And that I I would imagine that a lot of it is sort of working with the vocal tract and those vowel modifications and finding ways to maybe boost certain resonances or reduce certain resonances that help to create that quality that they might be looking for.
Yes, absolutely. So we want to narrow and shorten the vocal tract for more higher frequency boost, and then we want to lengthen the vocal tract for those lower frequencies to come out.
So that is part of the voice feminization and masculinization program that you do with your
Yeah.
students.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing that you are also a certified life coach and mindfulness teacher, I would imagine that you are able to really incorporate a lot of that into your work with these clients and with all your clients. What kind of tools do you incorporate?
Yeah, so I came to this realization very quickly that we're working with an entire human, and it's not just about their voice, it's about the emotional aspects, and do they identify as female or male in every context? Maybe not. So that's why I kind of went on to become a certified life coach so I could help them in a more holistic way. And then in terms of the mindfulness, I like to start all my sessions with some breath work, checking in with alignment and where their mind is at that day. And I'll usually do a 1 to 2 minute mindfulness meditation to sort of bring their attention to their breath, and maybe to try and picture their authentic self, or try and listen to what their authentic voice might sound like. And there's just so many nuances in the work that we're doing. It's really hard work, and they have to really be aware of tactile sensations and where is the vibration coming from? Is it coming from here? Is it coming from here? So if they're not being mindful, they might not be able to really feel what's happening in their voice and what's feeling good, what's not feeling good.
Yeah.
So yeah, the mindfulness really
That
helps.
is just so true for I think any all singers and voice users. I love hearing you say that. I actually do the same thing with my clients. I start with a 2-minute mindfulness exercise, and I see such a shift in them from the way I see them in the beginning, and then after we do that
Yeah.
mindfulness exercise, there's always just like you feel it kind of everyone kind of like settle in a little bit and be a little more open to the experience, and they let down their guard a little bit, and just I
Yeah.
find that it just is so helpful.
They
We
learn.
all need that. We all need to take that time to get present in our bodies and singing and speaking. I mean, gosh, I felt like, I mean, through my vocal journey, I went through a lot of wanting to make changes with my speaking voice, and it can be really difficult when you've been using it a certain way for decades, right? These habits are so ingrained in us. So I just think, yes, if we don't have that awareness of what it feels like when we do make the changes, and then also just that awareness to be able to take these new ways of using your voice on and not just forget about them after you leave your lesson.
Yes, yeah. The goal is generalization and being able to also use their voice for the rest of their life. So we have to make sure we're doing it in a very healthy and efficient way.
Right, right. Yeah. So how do you work with those limitations? Do you find that, I mean, is it often that you get someone that comes in that wants to sound a way that maybe isn't going to be healthy for their particular instrument?
Yeah, so if I hear any sort of strain or discomfort, I'll stop and we'll figure out why. Maybe there's not enough support. Maybe they're not ready for that pitch range quite yet. So we'll work our way up. And a lot of times, my clients or students come in and they're like, "I want to sound very, very feminine."
Mm-hmm.
And they take on this really high pitch, and then they kind of discover, maybe that's not me, maybe that doesn't sound very natural for me. And then we kind of settle on a lower pitch that still sounds feminine, but
Mm.
I let them discover that themselves, because I never want to be the one to tell them, "Oh, well, you can't do that," or "That's not going to be realistic." Because I don't want to put any limitations on them and their identity or their sense of identity through voice.
Of course.
But I'll let them discover that themselves, and they'll come to me and say, "Oh, well, maybe I don't want to sound that feminine. Maybe I want to sound, more androgynous, or maybe I want to use a lower pitch that's more comfortable."
Right. Do you have any practice tips that you give your clients to help them incorporate these new, especially for like speaking voice, that I think sometimes is, I don't know, maybe more difficult to practice because at least you don't have maybe a song that you're working on. So it's like having to either read text or have a monologue or conversation with yourself. Do you have tips that you give them to help them start to incorporate the new application from the exercises to the actual voice?
Absolutely. So for the speaking voice, we'll come up with a list of functional phrases or words that they say often. Um, they often come up with pretty funny phrases that they say often. And we'll actually practice those phrases in our session. And then I'll just encourage them to, sit down and practice those for 5 minutes a few times a day. Short, frequent practice is best for just taking on that new motor muscle memory habit. So I'll have them do that at first. And then as we get into the conversational level, I will recommend, if they're ready, to start using their voice with listeners, maybe starting with someone they're really comfortable with, like a good friend or a parent if they're supportive. And then, starting to use their voice with different listeners, and maybe keeping a journal on how that feels and how it went. Um, Usually the phone is the scariest part, because the person on the other end doesn't really see what the person looks like. So all they have is their voice to, to pass. So that's usually the last thing I'll have them do, and kind of just working on the emotional aspect of doing that.
Yeah, and what is that? How does one work on the emotional aspect of doing that? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of my clients have these beliefs about themselves, and kind of working through, um, developing new beliefs, and,
Mm-hmm.
really just acknowledging how it felt, and working on, continuing to work on finding a voice that feels more
Yeah,
authentic.
self acceptance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hmm,
which we all are working on all the time.
absolutely.
Do you feel like, I mean, that's a really great background to have in addition to teaching singing and all of that. So, do you feel like teachers who don't have that background but are, excellent voice teachers, do you use a lot of the tools that you learn that you have from being an SLP, like in terms of, I don't know, pitch measurement or things that maybe a regular voice teacher isn't equipped with?
Mhm.
How do you recommend, like, do you feel like just a voice teacher is still equipped to be able to adequately or more than adequately work with gender diverse voices?
I do. I honestly feel like I use more of my vocal pedagogy and vocal performance background because having that experience of being able to modify my own voice for, I've played different genders in operas and
Yeah.
I've had to do different accents and different, I sang in different languages. So having that experience of, being able to feel that in my own voice, I think that is something I use more than my SLP background per se. I think that there's a lot of aspects that I learned in my SLP degree that are very, very helpful. But I think that if you're culturally competent and you understand how the voice works and you're equipped to work with singers and speakers, and you become very culturally competent in working with this population,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's great. So is there anything else that you would like to add? I have this little speed round of 10 questions that I want to do with you, but I would love to know, is there anything else that you would like to add to our conversation about this?
No, just if anyone has any questions, they can feel free to reach out to me. I love talking about this stuff, so happy to help.
That's so generous of you. And I'm definitely going to include ways to get a hold of you and find you at the end of this talk, and also in the links, both on my blog and on IGTV. Okay, so I have this little speed round of 10 questions, which is just really fun. And I will credit Brene Brown for this because she does it in her podcast,
I love.
Unlocking Us. And so she's my inspiration for this. So you're going to fill in the blank.
Okay.
Vulnerability is,
Key.
I love it. Yeah. Okay, you are called to do something brave and you are feeling some real fear. What is the first thing that you do?
Breathe.
Yes. Yes. What is one piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh, wow. Just take one day at a time. Don't worry so much.
Yeah, like being present, right? Don't
Mhm.
worry about the past, don't worry about the future, just be right.
Yeah. And that's something I try to work on every day.
Yeah, I know. It takes practice, right?
Mhm.
What is something that people often get wrong about you?
Oh, well, I'm very small in stature, as you know. um, so I think that a lot of people think I'm um, very timid or someone who kind of just goes with the flow. But I'm actually like a little powerhouse in a small body. So they find that out very quickly as they're talking.
That is fantastic. I love that. What is your favorite movie
Oh
or
gosh,
a favorite movie? I know, it's like there's so many, right? But what's like one?
hardest questions. Um, I really love the King's Speech. It actually inspired me to become an SLP and work with people who stutter as well. Um,
That's
another another area that requires a lot of vulnerability and fear and counseling.
Yeah, I love that movie. I really loved that.
That's so good.
What is a concert that you'll never forget?
Wow, I haven't been to many concerts. I think my first concert was Britney Spears. And so I'll never forget that one.
Nice. Yeah, that seems pretty unforgettable. That's a cool first concert.
Yeah.
What's your favorite meal?
Um, I really love tacos because you can make them vegan. You can do so many things with them.
I'm with you. I think that's, yeah, my favorite meal too.
Yeah.
What's on your nightstand?
I have a book, I have a lamp, and I have a little it's like a little lavender heating pad, and I sometimes I heat it up at night to just kind of calm
Like
myself.
a bean pillow kind of thing?
Yeah, it's like filled with rice and lavender
I
and
have one of those too.
it smells good, and it just like calms me down and gets me ready for bed.
Okay, well, what book is on your nightstand?
I have it's Rachel Hollis, what is it? Girls Stop Apologizing, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, I
nice.
read her first one, so I got her second one.
Nice. What is a snapshot of an ordinary moment that brings you joy?
Ordinary moment. I mean, anytime I go to the beach is really
Yeah,
um, ordinary but extraordinary. Whenever I get
yeah,
to breathe in that ocean air and just be on the sand, that's when I feel the most grounded and happiest.
I love it. What are you grateful for right now?
I am grateful for my health and being able to work with the clients I work with every day. I'm so thankful that they trust me on this vulnerable journey. And I also get to have balance in my life and work and take care of myself as well.
Beautiful. So I just wanted to mention too that you host, so you are the owner of Live Vocally, which
Mhm.
is a virtual voice studio, and you are hosting a transgender voice group once a month. Do you
Yeah.
want to just say a little bit about that?
Yeah, so every month, near the end of the month, I host a virtual transgender voice group um, so that people all over the world or country can join. And each time I have different topics. Like this upcoming one, we're talking about fashion. I have someone who's really, her background is in fashion, and she's going to talk about how to align your fashion with your identity. So I have a different theme every time, and um, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay, great. So it's not actually even completely voice related then, correct?
No,
Yeah,
it's not voice related. Yeah, every time I have a different, try to have a different speaker and theme.
cool. I love that. And how do people find out more about that? And where do people find you?
Well, they can join my mailing list. So if they email me at heather@livevocally.com, I can get them on that and let them know about any events I'm hosting. Um, or they can find me on Instagram and message me as well.
Okay, beautiful. Well, this was I mean, I just think it's such a wonderful thing to help all of us voice teachers out there be more aware of and more informed about so that we can continue to just be more inclusive and help support these communities that need to be centered and just continue to fight for equality in our world.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for being here, Heather.
Thank you so much for having me.